going over Patreon, or this is our Q&A for Patreon, where we answer questions about esports or gaming health and wellness and even performance. Our patrons submit questions, we answer them, and this week is somewhat different in the sense that we're getting some questions, getting them from Twitter, getting them from some of the patrons that we're working with to improve their health, improve some of the issues that they're dealing with. And with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with one. This is a patron that I'm working with to help him improve his wrist pain. And just to paint a brief picture, he has wrist pain right over here. If you guys can see, closer to the thumb side of his wrist, but at the palm side of his wrist. And he experiences this pain after about 30 to 60 minutes of FPS play. He plays Overwatch and Rainbow Six Siege, and while I did give him sort of an overall plan, we did dig into, we did explore how he was holding his mouse to see if it was a contributor to his wrist pain. And he is definitely doing exercises. We definitely have monitored his schedule and looked at his posture. But today we're just going to focus on the grip. And I want to show you guys because this is really important. It's a really important thing to look at to identify if you might be overloading certain muscles at your thumb or at your hand or at your wrist because of how you're holding the mouse. So I'm going to give you guys a little demonstration here. We have this video popping up. There we go. It's right in the center. So you can see how he holds the mouse. And what he's doing is, you can see his ring and little finger are not really gripping the outside of the mouse. That is a little more traditional in nature. So I'll play that back one more time just so that you guys can see it. He is, again, using his thumb, his index finger, and his middle to grip and move the mouse. So every single time he's aiming, every single time he's moving his cursor, flicking, positioning his crosshair for the respective game that he plays, he is using specific muscles. He's using his thumb over here. He's using the muscles on the closer towards the thumb side of your forearm here. And even though the muscle that controls every single one of your fingers is the same, comparing your first two and your last two, we can see that he prioritizes the use of these two. So compared to the traditional grip of using the mouse like this, holding with my ring and little finger, he is using his first three as I showed earlier. So kind of like this. And that means that, again, this guy is going to get used a lot, and these guys are going to get used a lot. And that's really consistent with what he's feeling. So if we imagine that he moves his wrist 100 times in 30 minutes, and that's probably an underestimation, then that means he's using his thumb and his forearm muscles here on the thumb side 100 times. Whereas if I asked him to hold it in a more natural or traditional sense where he is using his ring and little finger, then he would have it a little more equally distributed or spread in the muscles that he's using, so that these guys don't begin to become irritated. They don't develop inflammation. They don't develop that pain sensation that he feels after the 30 to 60 minutes that he plays. In general, to keep it a little more simply, there is a more spread distribution of the muscle activity for this gamer performed over the course of his gaming session. And instead of the same thing, thumb and these guys here, it would be spread into his hand over here and into the rest of his forearm, as you guys can see on this side as well. And you guys can even test that out for yourself. If you pick up the mouse right now with only the first three and try to move it, comparing that with the more traditional grip of holding it with your ring and little, you can see with each movement what is being worked. And just imagine that over 4 to 6 hours, of course he's going to develop pain. So it's just another testament to how important it is for us to pay attention to how we're using our equipment, how we're using our keyboard, how we're using our mouse, how we might be positioning our monitor. All of those influence and create different levels of stress for our body, for our eyes, for our fingers, for our hands, for our forearms, for our shoulders. So be mindful of that. That is one key thing that we always look for when we're working with anyone that might have wrist or hand pain. So that was the first question. And for the second question, Kate, while it was directed towards me, Kate has a great response for this question, and it is from someone named GizmoIWNL. He says, hey Matt, recently I've been feeling a lot of pain in my wrist. I play on a really low sense and a heavy mouse, and I watched your wrist prevention exercise video and started doing it, but I still experience some wrist pain, and I was wondering if you know any solutions that don't affect my playing hours. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, Kate.
Yeah, definitely. And it's pretty common that like folks who are coming to us with questions about their injuries have often been told by another medical professional that they've seen that, well, the solution is you just have to play less. And while that might temporarily resolve your pain, it's not going to address anything that's underlying it. So if you go back to exactly what you were doing after taking a rest, you're going to have the exact same problem all over again, which is why it's really important to consider, what am I doing in terms of my setup, in terms of my positioning, and in terms of while I'm playing that sets me up to not be getting injured. It is important to note that if you've already got an injury, the way that you address things is going to be a little bit different than for prevention. Prevention is going to be a little bit kind of lower level. It'll take less time to get a good impact out of it. If you already have pain and injury, then that tissue is already irritated and already, to some extent, a little bit damaged, which means that in addition to building it up so that you don't get injured again, you've also got to build it up so it stops being injured in the first place. So just like keeping in mind mentally that it's going to be a longer term process is going to be really important. 2, if you are not in a position to negotiate how much time you're playing, like if there's no way you're decreasing your amount of time at all, that's fine. But again, keep in mind that that might prolong your recovery period. I'm not saying stop entirely, but if you've got the flexibility to decrease a little bit and add in kind of some supplementary exercises, you might find things are faster than just doing the exercises and doing the exact same amount of strain and load as you had been doing when you got injured in the first place. So how do you build those things into your routine? 3 easy ways: your warm-ups, your breaks, and your cool-downs. What are you doing to get ready? What are you doing to take breaks? What are you doing to recover? When it comes to your warm-ups, think of your muscles like rubber bands. You wouldn't go and try and stretch a rubber band that you just pulled out of the freezer unless you wanted that rubber band to snap in half. You would want that at least at room temperature, preferably body temperature, before you tried doing a whole bunch of moving around with it. So make sure that you've got kind of some degree of warm-up going on. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to go for a mile run just so you can do gaming, but do some exercise for your whole body, some exercise for your shoulders, something for your wrists, something for your hands, something for your fingers. I'll do something like do 10 air squats, 10 shoulder rolls in each direction. Oh God, my cat's going hunting. 10 wrist rolls, and 10 open and closed hand stretches, and 10 tendon glides. That takes me under 5 minutes, probably under 2, depending on how quickly I pump out those air squats. That gets kind of good whole body blood flow. Make sure that your muscles are warm before you start playing, which means that your tissues aren't having to warm up as you are forcing them to do this like precise, quick movement, which is what gaming's all about. At least, you know, FPS and high tier stuff. Then what are you doing for your breaks? We've talked about our analogy of the heat meter before and like the overheat mechanic that you see in games. Your body is kind of similar to that too, in that over time that strain, that heat builds up and your body's going to need a cool down in order to kind of reset and not hit that point of overheat, which is injury. Taking small breaks while you're playing every 45, 65, 60, even 90 minutes is going to help you kind of reset that meter a little bit, bring your cooling down, so long as you use that break to do something different. Get up, walk around, stretch if something feels tight, do some exercises if something feels loose. Just do something different with your body that you're not currently doing. My go-to for that is standing up and doing what we call no money exercises, because it looks like you're reaching into your pocket, sticking your hands out and saying, I got no money, because your hands are right in front of you, your shoulders are pulled back and together, and you're just turning out like this and taking a deep breath. It's also a really great like mental detiltifier because taking a deep breath helps with anxiety.
Exactly.
Just getting that like competitiveness up. And then what are you doing for recovery? What are you doing for your cool down immediately after? Are you doing some stretches if something is tight? Are you icing if something feels inflamed? Are you using some heat if something feels tight? And then what are you doing kind of to recover in your off time from gaming? What are you doing with your sleeping habits? What are you doing with your nutrition? If you're dealing with a lot of wrist pain, one of the kind of easiest things you can do to guarantee your wrists at least like 6 to 8 hours of neutral positioning is wearing a night splint while you're sleeping. Night splints are a little bit different than like the kind of heavy, bulky braces we're used to. They're like really cushioned and they keep your wrists like this. I bring them to tournaments with me because I know I'm going to be working on people a lot. My hands will get sore. So having like just that cushion and keep my wrist in neutral, I know I've got 6, 7, maybe even 8 hours of time when my wrist is relaxed. And then when I'm doing my exercises, when I'm doing my gaming, I haven't added the stress of like sleeping on them funny because otherwise I will absolutely sleep like this. I sleep weird. And then last but not least, pay attention to your positioning and your setup. Gizmo, you mentioned that you've got low sensitivity and a really heavy mouse. That might be because that's what you're most comfortable with. Consider, though, that maybe if you change up your sensitivity or if you use a lighter mouse, you'll be putting less strain on your wrist. If that's not something you can compromise on, that's fine. But keep in mind that then you're going to need to do more to build up the strength and the endurance of the muscles that support your wrist, the muscles in your forearm. You're also going to want to see, are you doing all of your movements from your wrist? Do you control your mouse like this? Or do you move more of your movements from your elbow? If you are mostly moving at your wrist, can you do some movements, maybe broader movements from your elbow instead? And then check and see kind of how you're aligned. Ideally, your mouse should be like directly in front of your armrest. Your armrest should be at the same level as your belly button, which should also be at the same height as your desk. If you're really short like me, you might have a stool underneath your desk so you can be at that height. If you are not really short, you may not need to use the stool. Make sure that you're sitting back in your chair, that your shoulders are relaxed, and that your arms are supported. The more you're having to do this to hold your arms up and keep these muscles engaged in order to have stability, the more strain you're going to build up. Basically, take out as many strain factors as you can while you're gaming, and then build up your muscles as much as you can in your off time, both in terms of strength and endurance, and you'll be in a much better position to deal with pain. So not just doing the wrist prevention exercise video, which is great, and you should absolutely keep doing it, but considering specifically what's going on for you. Is it a weakness here? Is it a weakness here? Is it a lack of mobility at your wrist that's affecting things? Once you can identify the problem, immobility, weakness, fatigue, so lack of endurance, then you can know kind of how to target your exercises. If the issue is you can't move enough, wrist mobility. So that's stretching, that's joint mobilizations, locking your hand against the table, locking your hand against your wrist, and then rocking. Obviously doing this, I don't think you guys can see my table if I do this.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Can we see my armrest?
Yeah, they can.
Right. Perfect. So keeping my hand locked here, rocking my arm forward is going to give me more wrist extension. That's an easy way to work on wrist mobility along with your stretches. If the issue is that you've got fatigue, a lack of endurance, then you want to do a larger number of exercises with very minimal weight. If your issue is strength, then you want to do a larger weight, lower reps kind of deal. Basically, pay attention to what your body's telling you, figure out which specific thing you need to target, and make sure that your setup is supporting you in as much of a neutral, unstrained position as possible.
So Gizmo, you basically got everything you need to know about how to manage your wrist in the last 5 minutes from Kate. So you can always reference back this video. That's sort of your plan. I would take it step by step and look into some of the things that you can gradually implement. And as she said, if you are flexible to include some of these things, it might speed up your recovery time. So definitely just take the time, listen to this video back again to see if there are things that you can gradually implement. But as a start, I think everything that she said, warm up, breaks, cool down, those are the things I would begin to implement, and then look at the other things, your external factors, your posture, ergonomics, and even things like sleep and utilizing a brace. But that was so in depth, and I think anyone that might have any wrist pain can always reference that back just to learn a little more about hey, what
And if
are
we
the
want to throw it up in like a 10-second clip so that people don't have to listen to me talk for 5 minutes, so you totally could. I have a great voice and
right?
really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
5 things. Check your setup. Make sure it's neutral as much as possible. Implement warm-ups, breaks, and cooldowns. Make sure that your breaks and cooldowns in particular address your specific deficits. Identify your specific deficits. Is it lack of mobility, lack of strength, lack of endurance? Be flexible with what you're doing. If you can afford to decrease your time a little bit so you can build up your exercise time, great. If you can't afford to do that, just know that it's going to take a little longer. And then make sure that with your setup, everything is kind of not just fitting you, but also is, again, decreasing strain as much as possible. Do you need a heavy mouse? Do you need that low sensitivity? Is all of your movement wrist-based? Or could you change up your mouse? Alternately, could you change up your movement pattern? The answer might be no, but consider what you could do to kind of decrease strain.
Exactly. And we just gotta do a little plug here. You know, we do individualized health coaching through Patreon. So
We
if you
do.
guys are interested in that, you guys can just check it out. Patreon
We're happy to
/1HP.
help kind of figure out those
Yeah,
specific deficits if that's something that you want to work on.
exactly. We can dig into it a little more, and we give you overall plan, and you have access to us 1 time a week. But well, let's go on to the next question. This
Yeah, I want
question's
to.
a
I
little
want to hear
different.
that. I'm excited for this one for you.
Yeah, this question's a
Uh,
little different, and it's more relating to tournament pressure.
Yeah, which is
So
like, this is a really good time to ask this question because most of us are not going to tournaments right now. God, I hope you're not going to tournaments right now. So this is a really good time to like think about this question and start implementing things into routines. So this comes from Wizzy, not the Smash Bros player, but a Fortnite player, I believe, who says, when I practice for tournaments, everything's fine, but as soon as I actually get in the tournament, my body pressure gets higher and my hands get cold. I start playing bad. I can't place. If you have any advice for fixing that, Matt, this one's on you.
yes, yes. So I love this question. I think this is something that a lot of people, especially those in the Fortnite community, deal with because there's so many solo cups, so many duo cups, and then, of course, many, if not all, the tournaments are online, right? We don't have opportunity to play in person, so you are competing online on a regular basis, and this always and consistently happens to high level gamers, and really any level when there is, I guess, more competition or more potential stress on the line. So one thing that I wanted to start with is explore a little more about why it might be happening. And I like to split it up into 2 different categories. There might be internal pressures and there might be external reasons why it might be happening. So first of all, when your body pressure or what you're experiencing might be a response of stress. A lot of the times when we are entering this sort of fight or flight mode, we have what we call vasoconstriction, or our blood vessels constrict. So we don't have as much blood flow to our extremities here, or in the smaller muscles of our feet and our hands, because the goal is for us to escape. If a lion's chasing us, we don't need the small dexterity in our hands to be able to escape. We just need the big muscles of our body to run away. And just realize, hey, because that's happening, you might be experiencing this coldness. You might be experiencing this increase of internal pressure. So I think it is definitely relating to stress, but we need to figure out, hey, what are the reasons? Is it external stress? Are you sitting in a really cold room? Are you running a mile and then starting to play a game? I think those are less likely for a lot of the competitive Fortnite players. I think most of the time especially for some of the players that I've worked with, it is caused by internal factors, meaning how are you perceiving this tournament for yourself? What is your perception of the importance of this tournament? And I would say, a lot of the times, even though the game does not change itself, we think that we perceive it as really important, and that creates a lot of external pressure on ourselves. And understanding this and reminding yourself of this, that hey, the game is not really changing. It might be a really important tournament, but how I'm playing the game, what my own individual plan is, how I'm preparing for it, that's not changing. That's all staying relatively the same. And a lot of the times we get caught up on on that idea of, wow, this tournament means a lot. Wow, I can make a lot of money from this tournament. Or, hey, I need a place in order to be able to play in the prac court. And all these internal ideas that create this pressure for you and create stress. And that causes this sensation that you might be dealing with. So number one, you should always, or not you should always, but number one, you should try to develop a little more self-awareness of how you're thinking about these tournaments. Why is it really that big of a deal to cause me to feel this way? Or, hey, I'm going to be probably playing the same way. I'm playing the same game. I'm not going to be doing anything differently in terms of warming up. I'm probably going to be box fighting or doing all these things that I normally do. And that really leads me to the actual step of what you can do, which is prepare well. Right? You can increase your confidence in how you approach a tournament, regardless of how important it is, FNCS, World Cup, or just a daily cup, by better planning and better approaching for how you, better approach for how you're going to play the game. Meaning, hey, if you know what you're going to be doing early, middle, and late game, then you have that to focus on instead of focusing on, oh my God, I need to do well because I want to make money. If you focus on the things that are directly in front of you, which is, again, what your plan is, then you'll have less likelihood of experiencing this stressor of how important the tournament might be. And another way that you can prepare is, hey, creating these pre-game routines, pre-game rituals that help you stay warmed up or help you develop confidence in your aim, help you develop confidence in your plan, whether it be an actual mechanical warm-up through Aim Lab, through Aim Beast, whatever application that you utilize. If you incorporate that into your pre-game routine, that can help you develop some confidence going into it, but also allow you to focus on, again, something different than the actual perception of how important the tournament is. A lot of the times it's just associated with what we're focusing on that dictates how we're feeling, right? If we're thinking a lot about things that are stressful, like how much money you're going to make, how it's going to make you look to your friends, or how it's going to make you look to the rest of your Twitter followers, which a lot of people care about nowadays. But to the end, in the end, it's not really impacting you as a person, right? So that, I think that leads to the last point, which is you can actually do physical warm-up for your hands. In the last section when Kate described what she does, I also posted in the chat earlier, there's warm-ups you can do to actually get more blood flow to your hands so you don't feel cold. But I would say that is more of a temporary way to address pressure, or a temporary way to address stress. You need to address the underlying cause, which is how you might be thinking about the tournament versus, what are some short-term things that you can do.
Right. The thing that you mentioned, Matt, like creating a ritual, one of like the single biggest things that I teach all of the new players in the EXO Academy, which is like a group that gets women into high-tier competitive fighting games, is creating a ritual and doing it not just at tournaments, but at practice. Basically, like, this is the thing that I do before I play. I do it every single time. Every time after I'm done doing the thing, I play this. It creates this connection in your brain between doing a warm-up and playing the game the way that you always play it. It kind of helps you set that pattern for your brain so that you're not like, I definitely tend to, when I think about, okay, I need to not be stressed about this tournament, I need to just think about, how I usually play, I get more stressed. Exactly. Because as soon as I start stressing about the tournament, I'm like, oh God, I'm failing at the thing where I'm not supposed to stress about the tournament in the first place. But giving myself a habit, giving myself something else to focus on directly and narrowly works. It's like the difference between trying to meditate and being like, okay, I can't think about anything. I need to banish all thoughts. Oh God, I'm thinking about things. No, stop thinking about the fact that you're thinking about things. Instead, I give myself something to focus on. Like, I'll light a candle and I'll stare at the candle flame. And then I'm thinking about just the candle flame and nothing else. And it's not because I'm not trying to think about anything else. It's because I have one thing to focus on. Same thing goes for your warm-up ritual. You're not thinking about your stress. You're not thinking or worrying about the tournament. You're thinking about, this is the thing I'm doing now. This is the thing I will do next. It really helps you kind of narrow your focus.
So that, I love that too. I mean, that is probably one of my favorite things to suggest to a lot of the players that are dealing with some form of performance anxiety or nervousness, right? Because it anchors them into actually playing the game. It anchors them into focusing on their mechanics over thinking, right? Because ultimately you've already prepared for how
Right.
you're going to be playing the game and you just want to execute. And most of the time when we don't perform well, you're in your head. You're thinking about what should I have done here, or how should I process this situation? But you've already done all the preparation for the past X amount of weeks for whatever game that you play, and
Totally
you're
right.
just trying to execute on that. And
Yep.
and that's why, right? Like you said, I've even suggested moving your mouse pad into the specific spot, replacing your mouse at the center of your mouse pad, doing those kind of things, or even for a game like Overwatch, focusing on subtle mechanics in the spawn room. Those are the things that help you get you out of your head and into focus. So, yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that is something that so many people struggle with, and creating a pre-game or pre-tournament ritual that you implement during practice as well, because that will create this consistent confidence for yourself, is a really great strategy to start with. I mean, there's definitely so much more to it. There's so much that we can talk about when it comes to exploring your thoughts and how we might be able to change it. But that's not what we're trying to do here. But let's get to the last question. What's up?
Can you post those 2 threads that I sent you? There's 2 Twitter threads that we had that might give you guys some more resources on just like dealing with stress and dealing with focus in general. Just giving you guys some more like kind of stuff to focus on or build on.
Yeah.
And I promise we do see all of your questions in chat. It's just that our patrons get dibs on our question time. If we've got time after that, then we answer questions in chat. Just like, we're not ignoring you. I promise we see you there.
We will get to you guys.
We
promise.
do. We have one more patron question first, and then we'll jump on.
We do have one more, and this question is from Azpectral, and this is about tailbone pain. So Azpectral says, when I sit down to play any game, my tailbone hurts or starts hurting within 15 to 30 minutes. It's like a burning / sharp pain. Only things I do for it right now is to get up and walk around playing. I've tried pillows and cushions and they didn't really help either. Do you have any idea what that might be or how to help?
Okay, so with the caveat that I cannot diagnose you with a medical condition over the internet, there is in fact a name for the thing of your tailbone hurts. It's called coccydynia. Feel free to laugh at that word. It's because your tailbone is called your coccyx. Yes, we all laughed at that in PT school too, I promise.
We definitely did.
So there's a whole bunch of things that can cause it. It can have to do with like a weakened pelvic floor. It can have to do with spinal mobility. It can have to do with how you sit, how you're supported. I'm going to go over some like kind of simple things you can do about it, not necessarily things that address every single possible underlying cause, because again, I cannot diagnose your underlying cause. But things that you can do to help. One thing you can use rather than a regular cushion is called it's a donut pillow. It's basically a donut shaped pillow. It's typically given out to patients after they've had actually hemorrhoid surgeries, but it also works really well to take pressure off your tailbone. It kind of looks like a little inflatable like tube, like the kind that you go floating down a lazy river in, but smaller, and it goes in your chair. It's got like a little cutout for your tailbone. I recommend that no matter how silly it looks, because it will take pressure off your butt. But also consider how you're sitting and what your chair type is. The fact that your pain is relieved if you get up and start moving around does definitely suggest that, hey, maybe there's something going on with your sitting posture. Maybe there's something going on with your chair. If it's just the chair, the donut pillow can definitely help. If it's also partly your sitting posture, kind of reassess and reevaluate. You generally want your feet on the ground. I say this as I'm sitting cross-legged in my chair. You generally want your feet on the ground so you can distribute some of your weight through your feet as well as through your butt. But as my cross-legged posture might suggest, your best posture isn't just one set thing. Your best posture is continuing. Your best posture is your next posture.
Like
so
that.
If you're really shifting your weight in your chair, if you're like spending some time sitting cross-legged and then some time with both feet on the ground and then some time with like one leg up like this, and then some time with like one leg crossed over the other, that's great. Moving is good. You should keep moving. But make sure that you're not spending too much time sitting kind of like this, where you're rotated back so that your tailbone is taking a lot of the pressure from your spine and from the chair. Yes, leaning back is good for the discs in your spine, but you can lean back without slouching. This is This is me slouching. It's leaning back. My back's still straight here. Most of my weight is distributed through my thighs, through my feet, and through like the muscle of my butt, not the bones of my butt. There's also some really good research that suggests exercises that address the mobility of your thoracic spine, this part up here that's slouching so bad, and the flexibility of your piriformis, which is a muscle in your butt, and your hip flexor, which is a muscle in the front of your hip, can help with coxidynia or tailbone pain. Let's see, 6 quick and easy things you can do.
All right. I'll
Single knee
too.
All right. Single knee to chest. Do this one standing or lying down, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You bring your knee up to your chest, you hold. If you want to get a little bit of a twist on it, you can do that, bringing your knee kind of across towards your opposite instead. Feel that one a little bit out here too. Another one you can do is a figure 4 stretch, which is you make a figure 4 with your legs. I'm going to pop up in my chair so you can actually see this. Cross one ankle over the other. You'll do this one either sitting down or laying down. Don't do this balancing on one foot like I'm doing. This is terrible safety practice. OSHA should fund me. If this is not enough of a stretch on its own, you can push down on the outside of that knee. Just be gentle. Don't haul away on your knee. Another good stretch to do, standing lunge stretch. It's exactly what it sounds like. You stand, you lunge. The important part is that your hip, your back hip, is going forward and down. So it's not so much about how much you can bend backwards or how much your front knee bends, but it's about how much your back hip moves forward. Another good stretch to do is an open book stretch. You'll lay on your side, hands like this. You're going to rotate like you're opening up a book. Look back at the hand that you're turning towards, hold for 10 seconds, come on back, do that 10 times, then do the opposite side. That works on that spinal mobility. 2 other things for spinal mobility. You can do this one sitting in your chair. Cross your arms over your chest. Get yourself up a little higher if you are short and your chair is tall. Lean back over the back of the chair. It's important when you do this one not to fling your head back like this. Your head is not leaning away. It's just your upper back that's doing the movement. And then the last one also can be done in a chair. This one is for thoracic rotation or upper back rotation. Use your armrests for this. One hand here, one hand on the back.
Feels
gentle
great.
twist.
You might feel
This
some
one's
pops.
one of my favorites.
It's
You
the
may have
best.
pops in your back. That's okay as long as they don't hurt. If they don't hurt, it's
Ooh.
fine.
Yeah. Got
It's
it.
actually one of my favorite ones to do like on breaks. One, because it's a very different movement than anything I'm doing while I'm sitting still. And 2, because like I get to look away from the screen for a little bit, which is like also a good eye strain relief. And if you really want to be like next level with it, rotate, and while you're rotating, take 3 deep breaths on each side. Then you're getting inside plus spinal mobility plus eye strain relief. Bam.
Boom. 3-for-1 deal. Slick deals.
We like deals around here.
Exactly. Wow, that was really helpful across multiple topics.
Well, I mean, coxidynia can be a pain in the ass.
Nice.
I couldn't not make that joke at least once.
That was good. So, guys, we went
All
over a few things today, and we'll just quickly run through them because we want to get to your questions, right? We have time for questions, and we're going to do them quickly. We're going to go through a quick fire Q&A. But let's review. Today we talked about how when you hold the mouse, or how you hold the mouse can impact what muscles you're using at your hand. You want to try to hold it with more muscles so that it's more evenly spread or evenly distributed, so you don't overuse or overload certain muscles in your hand and wrist. Second, we went over pretty much everything you need to know about wrist pain from beginning of the day to the end of the day, even in your sleep, and all these factors you need to consider, from warming up, from breaks, from posture to ergonomics to what you're doing when you're sleeping, really everything. So if you guys want to check out that first 5 to 15 minute portion of the video, it's literally gold. It is gold for anything you need to know about addressing wrist pain, looking for the factors that might be contributing to your wrist pain, because you can think of it as a piece of a pie, and sometimes there's bigger pieces of the pie that you need to address first. You don't want to go for the smaller slices, right? We like to consume bigger pieces of the pie.
Actual pie.
Yes,
We
we want to get fat.
Eat as much pie as possible.
And then we went over tournament pressure and how what we think really influences what sort of stress that we're dealing with, and how we perceive certain things, whether it be the tournament, how important the tournament is, how much money we can make. All of those impact how you are, or impact the amount of stress that you might cause or create for yourself as you are playing in a tournament. That might cause some cold hands, and what you can do is develop a little more self-awareness, or understand that, hey, you're not really changing what you're doing when you're actually playing the game. You're creating this pressure for yourself by thinking in this way. And then lastly, we went over butt pain and what happens with the coccyx. And if you just tuned in now, you're gonna have to learn about what the coccyx is by rewinding. So that is all for the patron specific